All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've waited all week for week 10 of the BBM4 Leaderboard Show. We have a special guest this week, Neil Orfield of Osimo, or now called Stochastic. Let's get it. All right, as I said, I'm your host, Liam Murphy. We have on the one, the only, Neil Orfield, a great person in the fantasy space. This episode, we're going to look at the top scoring teams. We're going to look at the top scoring teams of me, Neil, in the contest. We're going to look at the top fantasy scores. We're going to discuss advance rates. Advance rates is a hot discussion on Twitter right now. Neil and I are going to get down our feelings on it. But first of all, Neil, how are you doing? How's the season been treating you? Talk to us.
I'm doing well. I was feeling really good after Thursday Night Football. So I only did 120 drafts. And after Thursday Night Football, I was getting 30 of 120 through, feeling really good about that 25% advance rate. And then on Sunday, watching the games, watching all of my highest exposed players, like Brandon Cooks, I have a ton of, Keenan Allen, I have a ton of, CeeDee Lamb, all of them going off. I was like so excited about it. I checked right before I started doing the Sunday Night Football, so checking my exposures or my advance rates, thinking maybe I picked up another one or two. I was somehow down to 20. I watched all of the players that I'm overexposed to crush, and I lost some advancing teams. So I don't know what happened. Game back a couple. I'm at 22 out of 30 right now, and I know we're going to have the advance rate discussion, but we don't have that many metrics to go by during the regular season. So obviously something I'm tracking throughout the year. So I was kind of bummed to lose some advancing teams. Also lost a couple top 10,000 teams this week. So was not the best week for me overall. But yeah, overall it's going pretty well. DFS wise, not going great, but I'm enjoying the best ball side of things.
Yeah, I mean, DFS is kind of like if you play tournaments, it's did you win a tournament or no?
Exactly.
And neither of us are Utica, of course. But I would say for if your advance rates went down or up this week, it depends a lot on your exposure to Chiefs, Dolphins, Eagles players who all had a bye this week.
Yep.
My exposures went up because I have 20% TJ Hawkinson, but I know I don't have as much as the guys on bye, so it's a little bit inflated right now. Neil, the first thing I want to get to before we're not going to bury the lead. We're going to get right into the advance rate discussion, but the first thing I like to do is when I ask a new person on my YouTube channel is could you just introduce yourself to the fantasy space? Not everyone is on fantasy Twitter. They don't know the history of every single analyst in the space. I know you, our fellow Millie Maker winner. You had a great thread on your Millie Maker win. I like to read that, but could you just refresh the people? How'd you get into fantasy football in the beginning? How'd you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so honestly, I don't remember how I got in the beginning because I think I was in middle school maybe or like early high school when I discovered fantasy. I couldn't even tell you who my early leagues were with. Like I remember being obsessed with it in high school. I don't remember if I was playing with my high school friends, with like family friends. I have no idea who I played with.
You're just beating up on the randoms.
Yeah, I just remember that I might have been actually. It might have been at that point like maybe Yahoo was open at that time and just like you could get into random leagues. I honestly don't remember, but I was super into it like starting in high school or so. Continued playing season long. I was super into like I played on my cross country team, college teams, fantasy baseball.
Neil was a legit runner in college. There was a picture on Twitter I debated using that had you racing hard.
I was all conference. I was Division III. I wasn't like anything amazing, but I was a pretty good collegiate runner. And I was on all those fantasy teams for fantasy football, fantasy baseball, super like probably the most into it of anybody on the team, which is why I was really good at it. And then after that, I continued playing. I've been in some leagues for many years at this point. Discovered DFS, really got serious about DFS in about 2013. My younger brother invited me over to watch the Timberwolves. I didn't really care about basketball at the time, so it was like, I don't care about this game. Excuse me, recovering from COVID. I don't really care about this game, but I can make myself care about it by betting on it. So I joined FanDuel or played FanDuel that night and started slowly got really into it. And then by the next season, I was playing every single day for football, for basketball, got really into it. And so I've been grinding DFS since 2013. I think my first contest was actually like 2011, but started really grinding 2013, 2014. Didn't have a huge bankroll, so it was just a handful of lineups a night for a while. Finally, in 2019, I had my a six-figure hit. I won on an afternoon-only slate, 5 hand-built lineups. One of them won 100,000. So that really allowed me to up my game, up my volume. I joined Stochastic from a user perspective, using their tools and stuff, and really took off from there. In early 2020, I won another 6 figures XFL, and then finally and then I lost for 6 months straight, just almost lost it. That I think I lost $60,000 over the next 8 months. Finally, we get to 2020, September of 2020 or October of 2020. I had a big week in week 6 where I won $10,000 on my only afternoon only slate lineup. Won another $15,000 on Monday, won $40,000 on Thursday. So I was just for whatever reason, I was winning a lot of money, not quite getting there. And then on Sunday, won the Millie Maker. It was a weird thing where there was only one Sunday Night Football game, and I realized halfway through it that I had a live lineup. So had an incredible.
It was the $20 Millie Maker, right? The very large field.
220,000.
The only one that really matters. Who cares who's winning the 4K Millie Maker, the 555? The $20 Millie Maker is the Millie Maker of the people.
Yeah. So I won the Millie Maker of the people. Got to enjoy a real sweat because there was a Sunday Night Football game, Island game by itself. So I knew exactly what I needed, who I was cheering against, all that kind of stuff. So I had, the purest form of a sweat, and it came through with a minute left in overtime. DeAndre Hopkins got a reception to get over the 100-yard bonus and get me the Millie. And then from there, I really upped my volume after that. The following year had another really nice year of DFS, but decided I really wanted to get into content. It was something that I had always consumed a lot of fantasy sports content, had kind of thought about it previously. And I went to Tufts University. I was an English major. And while I was there, I was constantly reading fantasy stuff and kind of thinking maybe I could do that someday, just write about fantasy sports. That would be really fun. So I, pursued that. I reached out to Alex Baker, Awesemo, and they almost immediately gave me the opportunity to start doing some content for them. I started doing a weekly Saturday show about the weekly DFS slate. And about a year after that, got a full-time job at Stochastic and been doing that ever since.
So if you out there want to be like Neil, all you got to do is win the Millie Maker, and the opportunity will land at your shoes. And if you want to follow Neil, I put his Twitter in the chat here. He does a lot of great tweets. For example, before the showdown slate, he helps break it down for us, talking through the studs and the low-owned darts. But, we like to hear the stories of the people, in the fantasy space, because a lot of people have been here for a while. And if you're like me and kind of new to Twitter, you're just all right, sure. You're a part of the fantasy community,
Yep.
But you don't get to hear the stories. You talked about the fantasy season. I know you are a Vikings fan. Did that influence your draft strategy for something like BBM4? It's not, for a volume player like yourself, I'm sure $25 an entry is not a huge thing. So maybe that would allow you to draft even more Vikings players. I know me as a Bills fan, the lower the stakes, I'm like, fuck it. Josh Allen, welcome to the team. Although maybe I wish I did that in high stakes this year. Yeah. How'd that influence you in your drafting?
I mean, it definitely, I try not to let it influence me, but I also know I'm going to be watching the Vikings every week, and I'm going to be cheering for them anyway. So yeah, I was definitely a Justin Jefferson 101 guy. I actually didn't disagree with your take on Jamar Chase as a pretty good argument for Jamar Chase with the better quarterback as the 101. But as a Vikings fan, it was always going to be Justin Jefferson for me. Of course, I only got that first overall pick, I think 6 times in BBM4. So wasn't able to draft a ton of Jefferson. But I did. I think I have 15% Hawkinson, maybe, or 16% Addison. Maybe not. Maybe I've lower than that. I don't know. I'm over the field for sure on all of Hawkinson, Addison, Osborne, and actually Madison too, and unfortunately Kirk Cousins as well. So it probably influenced me some. I also believed in the offense. I thought Addison was a good pick, and for whatever reason, people were discounting him after the speeding ticket. I was like, all right, if you're going to let me draft him later, I'm just going to draft this guy. certainly it affected things. I didn't like, I don't want it to. I tried to like not let it affect me all that much, but subconsciously for sure. I if there's a Viking available and he's at a good price, I'm going to take him probably.
Look, if you can drive a car 120 miles per hour safely, you can catch a football. Little dodgeball quote for you. Well, great to hear there. Obviously, Hawkins. I mean, the Vikings as a whole, I'm with you. They had a great offense. I like to say, because people like to give me, they like to rib me. Oh, Liam, you just drafted the Bills because you're a Bills fan. But I don't think I would be drafting as much Bills if they were the Trent Edwards Bills or the EJ Manuel Bills. But let's first talk about discussions before we jump into breaking down this week. Basically, friend of the show, BBM1 champion, Justin Herzig, pulled the math for this year. I pulled the math for previous years. And this is, if you advanced all 150, you drafted 150 teams, you advanced all 150, so you got 100% advance rate. You still only have a 44% chance of having at least one team making it to the final. So I've not done the math to calculate what each team minutely adds to your odds of making a team to the finals. This is assuming that you are an average drafter facing average drafters. And, I kind of put out a tweet on this just because advance rates, they're always top of mind. It is one of the few metrics, like you said, that people have to kind of dissect their process. And I just wrote, people like advanced rate in best ball because it's easy to understand. It's also easy to misunderstand it. It is correct that you are not alive to win the tournament if you do not advance. And a lot of people take that point and they just stop there, right? Because that is true. And it's complicated to say, we know mathematically, though, each team that you advance in something like BBM4 very fractionally improves your odds of landing a single team in the final. You can advance 150 out of 150, and you're not a favorite to get a team there. This alone, coupled with almost all of the money being in the finals, should lead us to accept that if there are levers we can pull to even fractionally increase a team's odds of landing in the finals, or more importantly, doing well week 17, we need to mercilessly attack them. It is debatable what those levers are and if they even exist. Not to mention, it's also debatable what we can do to advance, I would say. Like, were there a lot of people screaming from the top of their lungs, Raheem Mostert is the advance rate piece you need? Probably not, which is complicated to think about. So many, again, just default to just advance, and that's going to be what it is, right? This is easy for people. People like easy things, and they like to be like, if I advance, I can win the tournament. The more advanced, the better chance I have to win. All I can say is in the past 2 years, I pretty strictly think through, how do I build the highest scoring team week 17 or a team that can easiest win the tournament? And I'll give some examples there. For example, when I won BBM2, I drafted a lot of Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, 2 Seahawks running backs, pretty strictly because they played the Lions week 17. So this is like a player take of me being like, good running team, bad run defense, and it ended up being right. For this year, I 2x'd the field on all of the Philadelphia running backs because they played the Cardinals week 17 and they're part of Philly. So again, that's a player take. I would also say if you build a 0 running back team, right then and there, you are accepting you're not building a team to advance, right? Because I know a lot of my 0 running back teams are buoyed by Tank Bigsby and Zamir White, and take any other 0 Cam Akers, whatever, a bunch of duds. But occasionally I draft that team that went Tyreek, Josh Jacobs, Josh Allen, and then the running backs I hit were Mostert, Achane, Kyron Williams, whatever. The point is, when you build like that, you're accepting, you know what, you're going to sacrifice a lot of your teams, but you could build some super teams. So, Neil, I gave some perspective there. Talk to us. What is your perspective on advance rate and just how important it is or is not for BBM4 purposes? Because that's what we'll mostly talk through.
So I agree with what you are saying, that the playoffs are the most important part. I will say, for me, advance rate is obviously a very important thing. It is something that I am thinking about a lot because it's the thing that I feel like I have the most control over. And it's also the thing that I have the best understanding of. I don't think that I'm good at knowing which defenses are going to be really bad in a given year. Like, for example, this year, I drafted a lot of teams playing the Lions because the Lions have always been bad defensively. And I just assumed they were going to continue to be bad defensively. That's
I'm going
obviously
to pause that one real quick, only because the Lions this year, like my take, just like viewing their offseason discourse was, this is a team that drafted a lot of defenders and signed 4 corners.
Yeah.
So like I knew they were bad
big
defense,
on the Lions. Yeah.
but they added players, right? So like we as drafters could have been like, this is a team that has shitty defense, but invested every offseason resource into their defense. So it's like, you know, like
at the same time, the Broncos I would have thought would have had a good defense with Patrick.
I'm with you there. I would have thought that too.
And then and they've come around. So like maybe they are coming around to being a pretty good defense. RIP to your Bills. I'm sorry. We didn't even talk about your Bills from last night. Didn't give you the opportunity to feel sad. Okay. But yeah, it's also, that's not a universal thing. Like I'm not saying that I don't think you can know. I'm saying that I don't really know. Like I'm not great at understanding who are the good defenders. Like when a defensive player moves teams, I'm a fantasy guy. I don't necessarily have that as part of what I consider to be part of my skills. I don't have a great understanding of the impact of defensive players, how they're going to play together, stuff like that. So if I were better at that, I would factor in it. Like, so as you say, I think you probably have a better grasp on who are the best defensive players, which defenses are coming together. And it's something that I might actually work on going forward. Like this is, my 3rd year playing best ball. I'm still just trying to get better within the things that I understand. And I think that I've done a good job of, I've gotten better throughout the years, but certainly there's stuff that is knowable that I don't know. And that would be one of those things, like which defenses are going to be good this year. I mean, it's not entirely knowable, but like you can get an idea if you're better at understanding defensive players and things. So I'm 100% with you that like, yes, you should be focused on the playoffs. Like that should be something you can consider. I'm also like, to me, I try to set myself up to do well in the playoffs just by correlating within my teams, having good structure in my teams, structurally having like the right amount of talent at each different position, quarterback, running back, whatever. And like the right amount of upside versus floor players to some extent at different positions to get me there. And then also have players that I think have big spike week potential. So I agree with what you're saying. It's hard for me in practice to like, to say like, I'm just going to build for the playoffs to get there, just because, as I say, like, I don't necessarily know who are going to be the easiest defenses when you get there.
That's just one example. Like to your point, you saying, like what you're saying is correct, right? Like a lot of us, we don't know what's going to happen. And someone like me who is basically saying, you know what, I'm taking that's just one way to build for the playoffs, is to take an exploitative stance and take a player edge because of either the player itself is so mispriced or their week 17 matchup is so good or their playoff matchup, right? I'm going to be wrong sometimes doing that. But if there's 150 people trying to exploit the people like me, like trying to draft like me, and they're all drafting differently because we all have different takes, I would take that player's composite player pool versus 150 people whose sole thought when they're drafting is what will make this team advance. And that's all they're thinking about, right? And like, not to mention that, Dalvin Cook is probably a player I would have floated out there in the preseason as like this is a guy who might advance you, but might not do so well weeks 15, 16, 17. Because I think it could have been easily argued, yeah, he was kind of cooked last year, but we would think his production would be weighted to early in the season, right? So like, yes, it's hard to say what's actionable for what you can do in the playoffs and the week 17 finals. And this is why a lot of people want to throw up their hands and pretend that we can't control any of this, which I do not agree with. But it's also maybe hard to say what we can do to advance. Sure, you can look at structures over time and be like 3-5-9-3s or whatever have advanced at a higher rate. That's also very unique to a given draft year, right?
True.
Where, 2 years ago, one running back went in the first round. So I don't know. It's so hard to discern like historical best ball stuff with one injury here or there. Like if CMC goes down week 1, right, or, like Nick Chubb going down 1, like what does that do to advance rates? That inflates the players taken around him. That probably inflates some later round running backs because you're removing that production. So It's all intertwined. It's hard to think through. I truthfully try to think through who's going to score the most points week 17. And I kind of like go back there. And like, a little bit, it's like, sure, who's going to score a lot of points over the season? But I don't know. It's hard to say.
I'm also very much I'm not a very strong player takes guy. And that's another thing. Like, I actually think this summer, I'm probably going to focus a little bit more on really deep diving and trying to figure out like having more player takes. But historically, I'm not really a player takes guy. I'm more of a draft structurally kind of guy. So yeah, like it's tough because I agree with you that you should be building for the playoffs, control what you can control. And to me, that's just like try to correlate your teams. Like I am big on correlating your teams, which I feel like I keep on hearing people say, well, you build out stacks for the playoffs. And I'm like, that is true. I also think that really impacts your advance rate. Like I think that people are underselling the extent to which Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. Luckily for me, all of my Garrett Wilson teams that are killed by that are paired with Aaron Rodgers. So I'm killing, I have 8% each of Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson. Well, most of them are going to be on the same team. So luckily, I'm not losing 16% of my teams to that injury, losing big pieces of 16%. I'm just losing 8% of my teams within that. I think people kind of undersell the extent to which it theoretically, at least, should impact your ability to advance in the first place.
Yeah, it's very complicated because I could also you made a great point there, but I could also say, well, not correlating Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers, or let's take the Colts players because I think it's even a better example. Like not correlating Pittman or Josh Downs with Richardson. Look what I have now. Now I have an improved passing situation for my skill players. So it is very complicated. But
that's a rare situation.
I don't know, guys. Like, and something like BBM4, we should accept. Yeah, something like BBM4, we should accept. Anyone consuming this content is like even crazier than the $20 Millie Maker on a given weekend because you got to surf all the chaos of the regular season, and that it's just it's insane. But I will tell you guys a big lesson I learned when I won BBM2 is 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 people out of 160 people had 3 or more finals teams. The only way you do that is either with insane playoff pod luck. So you just gotten like the luckiest pods ever those users did, or way more likely they had a pretty narrow player pool and those players smashed. And
I got to say, I had 2, and I was one Cam Akers not scoring 3 touchdowns away from having 3 in BBM3, and I didn't have a particularly condensed player pool. Like I was pretty spread out in that, which maybe that's just I got lucky. I did have I had a couple players. I think I had George Kittle and Tyler Lockett on both of my advancing teams, but I got a couple there without having really condensed, a ton of overlap on those teams.
And this will be a reflection of what the playoffs were like. For example, in BBM2, the players who really defined the playoffs were like Mark Andrews and Cooper Kupp, just like smashing the regular season and the playoffs. And the guys who had a lot of those had a lot of teams. Anyways, we'll move on to reviewing this week and looking at the top teams. We like to go position by position, looking at the week. QB1 on the week, maybe back-to-back. Oh, no, Stroud had it last week. Dak Prescott back on the map where, my top scoring team right now is a Dak team that wasn't even advancing 2 weeks ago, and now it's my top scoring team in the contest.
Was it high scoring but not advancing? Like what was how many points?
It was high scoring. Yeah, it was like high scoring third, like 20 points out, but it's like a Dak, Lamb, AJ Brown team that now just like
one thing that I've been sort of shocked to see is people posting screenshots of their teams that went off this week. Most of them don't have Brandon Cooks, and like he put up the biggest score this week, but it seems like most of the teams that really went off this week actually just had like Dak and CeeDee Lamb and maybe Gallup, but like actually did not have the highest scoring piece from the receiving core at least.
And that kind of makes sense because Cooks has been like, I would say loudly a disappointing piece. Yeah. Right? Like not quietly, loudly.
Yes.
He's given us 3 okay weeks in half point PPR, 1 great week. But absolutely unstartable and managed. Maybe he's getting healthy or whatnot. QB12, Jordan Love, who's quietly putting together like an okay fantasy season. Kyler Murray, man. Kyler Murray just from this point forward will finish as QB what to you in total points in points per game.
QB 8 maybe.
QB 8 in points per game. That's kind of low for what he's been historically, right? He's been historically
really?
like a 3 or 5 guy in the whole league. I mean, he averaged like 23 points per game. The question was with Kyler was he going to run? And we saw 6 rushing
He ran
attempts.
immediately.
Yeah, we saw him running when the game was on the line. So I kind of think the answer is yes, he is going to run, which is like, is sky the limit for him? Or was that just everyone trying their best against Arthur Smith? I don't know. Like, I didn't draft a lot of Kyler this year, just enough uncertainty. And you don't get that rewarded when you draft a low-owned quarterback, in my opinion. But I think you're excited if you have him. Quarterback is whatever. Let's move on here. Nice to see Geno Smith give us a usable week. He's had a pretty disappointing season. Running back in half-point PPR, the RB1 on the week, Brian Robinson with that just like busted coverage wheel pass that he just like took 90 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs putting up a huge season. I was a believer that Montgomery would not impact him that much. It's hard to say how that will bear out. He was running back tied for 1. Montgomery was running back 8. Rashad White, RB12, having a great year. What stands out for you for running back scores this week?
Yeah, both Detroit guys getting there in the top 8 there. What's really standing out to me is this explains why I had a bad week, because I'm underexposed to most of these running backs here. The Brian Robinson score, as you say, I don't know, kind of fluky. Devin Singletary becoming a thing suddenly. He was one of my bigger fades. I felt great about fading Devin Singletary, and now it's not feeling so great. Now he's looking obviously like he's taken off there. So it's a little bit disappointing for me to see Devin Singletary really being that dude. Jaylen Warren, it's sort of interesting. We can talk about that too. Jaylen Warren taking over for Najee Harris as the starting running back this week. I think we can expect big things going forward if he really does take on more than like 55% of the carries there. I have no idea.
That's the thing is like this kind of seemed like a ceremonial naming. Like no one on Twitter reacted to this, but the organization named Jaylen Warren the RB1. However, literally nothing changed about their usage, courtesy of Fantasy Life here. Najee Harris scored touchdown, still had 50% of the rushing attempts, 35% of the routes. I think everyone with a brain can see that Jaylen Warren is explosive with the ball, but him being the RB1 it was nice to see the touchdown, but it's just like, okay, he is what he was. I wanted to ask you about Ken Walker, because I noticed you were touting up Zach Charbonnet in DFS, who I drafted. He's my top owned running back. What was with the Charbonnet tell?
Just that he has been playing more and more, and he has not really been getting the carries as much, but he's at least been on the field more for the Seahawks. And I don't really think it is that game script, or it's not entirely game script dependent. Like he's out there more for passing down plays, but that includes the first half. Like he's not just out there in the second half. So even in close games, he's still out there plenty. He's still out there as a third down back. So just a matter of he's out on the field. Maybe at some point he's going to get more carries while he's out there. And they had a great matchup with that Washington defense that we really don't know what to expect now that they traded away Sweat and Chase Young, but I think it's going to be a really bad defense. And I just thought, nobody's going to play him. A lot of people are going to play Kenneth Walker. So I'll take the guy who's coming in at like 0.7% owned against a bad defense who may be taking on more of a role. Didn't really get there. He was fine this week for his salary, but definitely not what I was hoping for when I was playing Zach Charbonnet this week.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, Ken Walker, 50% of the snaps is like not a great play. He did get 76% of the rushing attempts compared to 25% for Charbonnet. So we'll see if better days are ahead for Charbonnet. He is consistently running more routes than Walker. But it's been a weird year where it's like Ken Walker, you're definitely happy to have for what he did in the past. Is he going to continue sharing the backfield? Hard to say. Running back as a whole, pretty high scoring week for them, I would say, in half point PPR, where the RB12 is above 17 points. Some weeks this is like 12 points, 10 points. Wide receiver had some absolutely massive scores at the top, buoyed by Keenan and CeeDee Lamb. Brandon Cooks also got there in the same game as Lamb. Amon-Ra has been consistently getting there. Mike Evans and Chase. And then, Noah Brown. Like, we got to talk about Noah Brown. Tyler Boyd and Tank Dell, the wide receiver, 11 and 12 on the week, around 16 points. what stands out for you for the wide receivers on this week?
I haven't looked up how many times Noah Brown was drafted in Best Ball Mania.
I have one Stroud Noah Brown team. I think he is at I want to say he's at like 96 teams.
92. I just looked it up. 92 teams. Nobody has more than 2 shares. So congrats to you. Your 1 share puts you on the leaderboard.
Let's see if my team is 37 points out from advancing. My Stroud Noah Brown team.
Not bad. Yeah, I did not draft any Noah Brown. I have every other Texans receiver. I didn't know Noah Brown was a thing still. Didn't know he was still in the league. So that was disappointing. I also don't have much of Tank Dell, sadly. I in my mind, I thought that Brandon Cooks had outscored CeeDee Lamb. Apparently that is incorrect. CeeDee Lamb's still the guy there in Dallas. This is
half point. So maybe in PPR he did. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. What stands out to me is that this week was just like, I feel like every other week has been pretty steady for me, just in terms of both like advance rates and like which teams are advancing, which teams are in the top 10,000 or right there. And this week we just saw a huge change there, because I think partially, as you said earlier, we had the Eagles and the Dolphins in particular on bye, and then Dallas just going completely off. Just we saw completely different teams kind of take over. It was a big, like a flippening in terms of which teams are advancing, which teams are in the top 10,000. I think it's largely just because of this Dallas attack.
Yeah, I think I only ended up taking Noah Brown twice all drafting season, once in a 5-5-5 and once in the BBM. But I remember having the thought in the preseason of Noah Brown was like good for the Cowboys. I remember thinking that, and Robert Woods and crew is skeptical. So like, the process wasn't quite there for me taking a little bit more. Tank Dell, if we look at like ESPN analytics, is like the Texans wide receivers are very underrated in like public perception, where I think a lot of people are just being like, oh, CJ Stroud is awesome. But ESPN analytics has Dell and Nico as like top 5 wide receivers in the whole league.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Hard to wrap your head around how good they are that young. I also I started taking Tank Dell in my early May drafts, just being like 3rd round draft cast with the Texans. But then once he became a popular pick in the preseason, I, like you, was like, oh, I'm not going to take the high owned guy, right? Just trying to get a little bit of game theory, but should have just chased him, obviously, with how he is smashing right now. Maybe Jameis Winston saved Chris Olave. Relatively high scoring week on the wide receivers is 2. Real quick, we'll look at tight end, which, I mean, I think the story of tight end is one of twofold for the season, where to begin the year, it was same old, tight end is dead, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But now I think the real discussion is you were happy if you landed on Hawkinson, Kittle, Andrews, but the addition of Trey McBride, Kincaid, Ferguson, who coincidentally were 3, 4, and 5, and like I would even add Dalton Schultz. I would add, I don't think Cole Kmet counts. I would add Laporta, maybe even like Logan Thomas. But like some of these mid to late round tight ends are legit options going forward. How would you rate the McBride, Kincaid, Laporta contingent, Schultz contingent? How would you rate those 4 in Ferguson? Those 5. How would you rate those 5? Because I think those 5 have legitimately changed tight end for years to come, maybe, as far as like best ball goes.
Yeah, you're obviously happy to have any of them. That's really tough, man. That is a tough question. I think I still go.
While you're doing that, we'll look at the one of my favorite tools by Fantasy Life is just the ability to compare these guys and just to see. So I'll put this in while you're talking.
Okay. I think I still put Laporta number 1, just because I think there is at least some threat that Dawson Knox comes back and cuts into Kincaid a little bit. Those 2 are pretty neck and neck for me as far as the top 2 goes. I think I'd put Laporta 1, Kincaid 2, probably McBride 3 at this rate, just because his usage has been so insane recently, and now he's got Kyler back, followed by Schultz, followed by Ferguson. It's tough though. I'm not a great talent evaluator. That is probably where I would put it. How do you see this group?
This has the past month of usage right here, rather than the full season, which will obviously wait till Laporta. I think for me, I would go Kincaid 1 based on offense, and then maybe McBride 2, just because I think his target competition. Oh no, I guess I would put Laporta 2 just because of what he's done and the quality of the offense again. Then McBride 3, and McBride over Ferguson for me just because he's not competing with CeeDee Lamb. Basically is how it is. This is like Hollywood Brown. Like he could be co-ones in my eyes. Then I think I'm on Ferguson because Ferguson's been like actually good, but is probably at best the 2. Although he's buoyed by Cooks not being great and Gallup not being great.
True.
And then I think I would go Schultz, who is probably the biggest jag of the group. He's also like the oldest of this bunch, so like probably less ceiling to pull on, but it's all close. Like they all have different metrics. Kincaid's got him on routes and catchable targets and end zone targets. Ferguson's got us on ADOT. All their ADOTs are similar. And Trey McBride's got it on target per out run, targets, air yards, play action targets. I don't know, guys. Let me know. I think the chalk answer is Laporta, but I think a lot of that is just being like, the dude scored 4 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns or whatever it is, and people are just like closing their eyes and being like, sure, he's going to keep on doing that. Where it's like, he's got to, it's hard to score a touchdown when Montgomery's going to, and Gibbs is going to, and Amon-Ra is going to. So I don't know, but I think these 5 tight ends have really changed the landscape, not to mention Taysom Hill.
If this were 2 weeks ago, I would be making fun of you for putting Kincaid number 1. But at this point, I really do think it is kind of a toss-up. Like it's a valid opinion at this point. Sadly, I am underweight to at least 4. I think I'm overweight to Dalton Schultz, but the other 4, I'm underweight to all of them. And I think I have 0 shares of McBride. So RIP me.
Yeah, I mean, McBride won me the 5-5-5 last year on a Kelsey team, and not even I like brand loyaled that, which I do that a lot. I mean, I have like 5% or so, which is over the field, I guess, but not, not enough.
He's somebody that I just, as somebody who doesn't have strong player takes, really, like that's not how I draft generally. I just listen to like expert, like everybody I listen to is like, this guy's trash. He's not going to be good. Like, so I was like, all right, he's the tight end 2, and he's not very good on an atrocious offense. I can safely not worry about that guy. Similar to my Adam Thielen take, of course. So yeah.
Yeah, you and me both. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. With McBride, it was just like me, I guess, just like in my brain, like years past, I would have been like fucking Zach Ertz who. But this year, I was like, okay, fine, Zach Ertz is going to be out there. And I guess that like both was right, All right. Now we're going to move on to looking at the top scoring teams. We don't really care about advance rates, but you're having a perfectly normal season. I got to ask, though, why 120 and not 150? It's not like the 30 more. Is the 30 more you just ran out of time? Or it's an unusual number to see?
So I ran out of time and I got to 120. And just for the sake of like doing the math, I was like, all right, that's a good stop. Like I knew I wasn't going to be able to get to 150. I was pretty busy. So I was like, I got to 120. I thought that'll do it. That's a good number. I know, like, even with the field is just having 10 of that player, 4 players who are drafted in every draft. So just for the sake of like tracking my teams and stuff, I thought 120 is a good, easy number.
I like it. Oh, Matador Mike hooking us up with the super chat. Thank you, brother. Ooh. He says, I have a DraftKings Best Ball. We don't usually talk about DK on this show, but we will for you, Mike. I have a DK BB Millie with Dell, AJ Brown, Evans, Thielen, Smith, Singletary, Montgomery, Mixon, Hurts, Allen, Stafford, and Njoku, Knox at tight end. His advanced, I feel pretty good. Mike, there's absolutely 0% actionable that you asked for us. Like, I thought you had a question for us, but hey, man, we're going to let you gloat on this team once more. Neil, say your favorite player on this team.
Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown. I have a ton. I think I'm actually on the leaderboard in terms of having that combo.
Josh Allen too. He went double elite quarterback.
He did, and Stafford. I probably wouldn't have gone Stafford there if I already had Hurts and Allen, but that's also something that I apparently didn't do enough of, is drafting 3 quarterbacks, because my advance rate's hurting because I have a lot of, particularly this week, a lot of players who were quarterbacks who were injured and then another quarterback on by. So maybe it's the right approach to have 3 there. I mean, yeah, it's a really strong team.
I don't even know how you get AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Hurts, and Allen.
That's a good point. That's a very
good point. Who do you get in the 4th round there? You know, like I guess it's got to be Allen or Smith, but seems tough. But good for you, Mike, and good luck, man. All right. So your top team, Neil, if you could read off the players for the people and tell us about it.
Yeah, so you're going to like this one, Liam. I got Josh Allen on this one. Josh Allen, I did not have Stephon Diggs. I have 2 total shares of Allen and Diggs, sadly, just because of the way I draft, where they went. I didn't draft them nearly as much as I wish I would have at this point. But I got the Josh Allen with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, just trying to get some pass catchers there with Josh Allen. And of course, Deontay Hardy, who that has not worked out at all, but had to try it. So I've got that. I've got Tua paired with.
Why is my global swap from Hardy to Shakir not working?
Right, I know, right? By the way, I do blame you for that Hardy love, because I was drafting a lot of Shakir early, and then I hear from you that Deontay Hardy's the guy this year. So that's your fault. That's
blame, but I still feel like that was the correct way to like synthesize the information.
Yeah, it just hasn't worked out at all.
No, Hardy's been
running backs. So this is a painful, because this is like I actually really like this team. I think this is a team that has a good shot. Hurts me to have Najee Harris. I only have 8 shares of him across 120, so I'm below the field on Najee and Jalen Warren for the record. But in 2 of my top like 4 or 5 teams, I have Najee Harris. So it does hurt me to see that he's no longer the starter there a little bit. Josh Jacobs, happy to see him coming on a little bit, although doesn't look like he did. Oh no, these are not their points. This is where I was drafting them. Okay.
This is the draft slide.
Yeah. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so Josh Jacobs, looks good as an RB1. I think he's coming around.
No, he's one of the best picks. If you didn't take elite quarterback, which you obviously did in the 3rd, it's not like you're missing any of the wideouts.
True. Good point. Yeah, we had a really rough space there in like rounds 2 and 3. So yeah, we're working out just fine. Yeah, Najee, hopefully he continues to have at least some workload and you can get a touchdown here or there, help this team. Aaron Jones, good to see Aaron Jones like kind of coming around. Seems like he's picking up more usage recently. Mostert should come back. Rico Dowdle actually worked out this week. I'm not sure if he scored on this team this week, but obviously I drafted him thinking he's going to be the handcuff to.
He did. I think he did, because he was like around 14 points. He probably outscored Jacobs, or maybe he was your 3rd flex. I mean, yeah, I think what you would be excited about this team is, I want to comment on the Najee thing, because it always seems to work this way, where it's like there's a player you don't like, you're like, fine, I'll take him once. I don't want to be stubborn. And they're always on your best team, or they're always on your team that like, now I'm in the finals, I need this guy. I think you should be real excited your top scoring team has Aaron Jones, because it's not like this guy's contributed at all to the reason why you're here. And we know he has a ceiling. And then, tight end is pretty much Kincaid and Chig until Knox is back. But, pretty strong team overall. I think the Hollywood Brown pick was like heavily weighted towards sharp drafters, where it was like the same lesson as Amari Cooper last year to me. Just like good player, bad team. The team is probably not going to be as bad as we think. Although, for Marquise, we at least knew Kyler was coming back. Although I guess for Amari, we also knew Deshaun was going to come back, even though Deshaun was rough. And then a lot of my teams look like yours, where it's like the second 4 wide receivers are like 3 zeros basicdon't So it's like a 4 wide out team,
Yep. Gallup finally did something this week, which helped because Tyreek Hill was obviously on bye. I don't think it was a great week for this team. I think for this team, I probably prefer that Dawson Knox does not come back, just because I don't want him to impede Dalton Kincaid as like being that dude. And who knows if he would anyway, but it's easier if he doesn't come back. Jacoby Myers obviously has worked out really well for me. Who knows? Like the past 2 weeks, he's done absolutely nothing. Hopefully that's not a thing that's going to last, because I have a ton of Jacoby Myers too. But yeah, it's totally just like the top 4. This is also one thing that I'm realizing as I'm looking through my teams. I probably need to be drafting more running backs more frequently. Like a lot of my teams, I only drafted 4 running backs. Like that might even be my most common, is just 4 running backs. This year, I think I maybe started drafting 5 a little bit more, but running backs get hurt at such a great rate that I'm sort of rethinking. I've always been like, well, there are more wide receiver spots to fill, so I draft more wide receivers, but then running backs get hurt at so much more than wide receivers that I'm sort of contemplating whether going forward, maybe I'll draft more teams that have at least 5, maybe 6 running backs on them. Because this is one of the rare teams that I have right now where I have all running backs healthy.
So that is that was a big takeaway of mine after Best Ball Mania 2, where just like so many of my teams were set at wide receiver, and I did like 5 running backs max for a lot of them. And I was like, damn, like I'm not getting enough running back points. So for the past 2 years, I've done more 6, 7, 8 running back teams. Now, that's great when you land on Kyron Williams and Achane. Right. But let me tell you, the extra running back darts when you land on Rico Dowdle and Zamir White doesn't really move the needle either. So I've drafted more running backs. I don't know if it's helped. It's something to think through for on my end too. But impressive showing for you where you got 3 teams in the top 10K on not 150 and all of them around the same. Me, I also only have 3 teams on the top 10K, which I think 2 is expected. My top team, again, was not even advancing 2 weeks ago. It's a Dak Purdy team, perfect quarterbacks. It's also 4 running back where Jacobs, Etienne, Ken Walker, and then Miles Sanders as the RB4 obviously would change that pick for a lot of players. CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown is going to be common on a lot of the top scoring teams right now. Ayuk and Pittman, 2 great mid-round pieces. I was definitely trying to get Richardson, and I think I got sniped on him. Burks, Mims, Juju, and Mingo, if I can find a spike week between this crew, the rest of the way, we're feeling good. So it's pretty much 4 wide receivers. It's also 4 tight end. And, Henry's given it some weeks. Mayer had a touchdown. K. Otton's given a week. Knox has been hurt. I don't know. Like, I'm rethinking through the 4 tight end thing a little bit just because of how much your team misses a dart at wide out and running back when those teams are hits, I don't
know that I ever drafted 4. I know that your friend Herzeg did I don't know, I saw something that he did about drafting more tight ends maybe being optimal, but not something that I've ever done. Something that I've been thinking about. Maybe I should do it. I don't know, though. It's
I did it a lot last year in the 5-5-5. Like 60-50% of my teams were probably 4 tight end on 20 round formats.
Wow.
But it's a year-to-year phenomenon, right? And like when other people are doing it, it's not as good. Because like part of the reason I was doing it is like, well, people aren't drafting last year. They aren't drafting Bellinger. They aren't drafting Conklin. These are guys I know who have starting roles. When all the tight ends get pulled up in cost, it's not so great to just start grabbing like randoms at tight end. Your second highest scoring team with 1309 is you got Joe Burrow. That's a low owned piece in the top. Talk us through the team.
Yes, I've got the Burrow with Chase and Higgins and Irv Smith stack. So very much stacked up. I've also got the Cousins stack, which RIP that kind of hurts. It is nice that Burrow's at least been through his bye week. So theoretically, as long as Burrow doesn't get hurt, he can carry me the rest of the way. But obviously just having one quarterback the rest of the way isn't great. But I've got with Cousins, no longer Cousins, but I've got Addison and TJ Hawkinson in there from the Vikings. Got your guy Gabe Davis in this one. Quentin Johnson, maybe he does something at some point. Romeo Doubs, not somebody I have a lot of, but he's worked out pretty well. And then, a running back. So this is a sort of rare 6 running back team for me. This is my sole share of Latavius Murray. Yeah, they're all working out really well. Derrick Henry's done fairly well. He's a 2nd round pick. As you said, like given how
he's like worse Jacobs,
Yeah, given how bad that turn has been, it's like, I guess he's actually been fine at the 2-3 turn. Mostert, obviously, one of the highest players in the top 10,000, probably one of the highest advance rate players. This is also a rare Singletary share for me. Josh Kelly, I felt so good about Josh Kelly after week 1. Like he is my highest exposed player in Best Ball Mania. I've got like 22% Josh Kelly smashes in week 1, and then we see Austin Eckler go down. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to win so much money. And then he puts up like 3 fantasy points every one of his starts.
That's so Calvin Ridley for me, man. Like the whiplash from the Calvin Ridley being like, yes, week 1. And then, oh no, the dude is cooked, is just
rough.
Very rough.
Kyron obviously has been great. And Latavius Murray, as I said, my one share of Latavius Murray worked out this week.
Yeah, I have very few Lat Murray myself, but yeah, I mean, you nailed every running back pick. On the Derrick Henry train, like I would not be afraid of, like I'm not afraid of Derrick Henry at all. Not having a ton of him. Hey, Derrick Henry beats me, he beats me. But to our point, on the wide receiver train, it's like, from a season-long perspective, Smith, Higgins, whatever, been kind of disappointing. Do I kind of like those guys in the playoffs? Shout out Patrick who made the tool. He said, Mostert is by far the highest advancing player, and it's not even close. I think he was roughly like 45% or something,
Damn.
but Patrick, who made a great tool, made this.
I love this tool. I just started using this last week. I did a thread about it and gave him credit. Yeah, this is a fantastic tool.
It really is. And this is linked in my Discord, which you can join in the YouTube description below under Best Ball resources if you want to look at it. But yeah, I mean, really fun team here. Quentin Johnston scored touchdowns, so you got to put some respect on the guy's name. Rashee Rice is the real winner here for your mid-round picks. Honestly, all of them have been giving you production, but I think the Burrow Chase Higgins combo is going to be tough to advance potentially. You're competing against CMC teams. You're competing against Tyreek teams, Diggs, AJ Brown, CD Lamb teams for advance rate, Amon-Ra for advance rate purposes. So it's tough to get that through. Obviously, Mostert is the reason kind of why it is, but you got all these mid-round or late-round running back hits to help carry you. And I think the way this team was structured was like smart. It's anchor running back with a lot of mid-round running backs, and you just happen to hit on all of the running backs. And again, like I build a lot of teams this way. A lot of my teams look Tank Bigsby, Zach Charbonnet, who like I like to have but isn't doing anything. That you take another disappointment. My second highest scoring team is my team that had been running it for the last couple of weeks. It's an Allen Bryce Young team with Breece, Swift, Mostert, Jamal, Algier, and Chuba Hubbard. It's pretty much against the 4 wide receiver team. Diggs, Metcalf, Gabe Davis, and Addison. Mingo, please give a spike. DPJ is like hurt/traded. Shaheed actually is giving some spikes. Hardy is nothing. And then
Michael Thomas out now.
Yeah, I mean, which I guess matters for him a little bit. I don't even think he got. I think A.T. Perry played more though.
Did he really?
Or so I don't know. Let's look at it actually.
How much?
I know that he did not first benefit from it. Like maybe he did in the long run, but Shaheed was at 81% of routes, and A.T. Perry ran more routes at 90.
Still 81%. We'll take that. Rashid, he's been good all year, just not really out there that much. So we'll take that 81% any day.
And Lynn Bowden.
I don't even
remember Lynn Bowden.
I forgot about. He was a running back, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a running back we drafted a couple of years ago. And then the Hawkinson Kincaid combo is carrying a lot of my teams because I just paired those two a lot.
Combo. Yeah.
And that's me accepting a 0 week 13, right?
Yeah, I was actually just about to say that. I think that's one thing that you and I are very different on. I'm very much a bye week bro, which is definitely an advancement rate thing. I'm at least cognizant of bye weeks. And I was just looking at one of my lineups today or yesterday where I was like, oh, this lineup is like 20 points out of cash in, looks really good. And then I realized it's not going to have a quarterback week 13. And at this point, with only 4 weeks remaining, 20 points out, I'm like, can I overcome no quarterback that week? So I think it's going to hurt me to not have the offsetting by not have any quarterback in week 13. So yeah, it's something that I pay attention to. I think a lot more than you do. And I think that a lot more than a lot of other sharp best ball drafters that I've talked to. So who knows how valuable it is exactly. But yeah, hopefully that's not.
I think a lot of people have accepted it doesn't matter that much for tight end, where it's like
more so for quarterback than other positions.
Yeah, it's like congrats, bro. You got Gerald Everett this week, and I don't have any tight end points. Like, what did I lose?
Exactly.
But I'll also do I'll draft solo quarterback sometimes, and honestly, like solo elite quarterback is kind of crushed over the past couple of years. Now you can't carry an injury if you do a solo elite one. There's a lot in there. Your third highest scoring team. Talk to the people about it.
Yeah, so you can see I think I have 0 overlapping quarterbacks so far on these 3 top teams. This one, Deshaun Watson, which not feeling good about that. He looks like he's hurt. Who knows if he's going to be playing.
He's actually been playing good though the past 2 weeks, right?
I forget did he put up some fantasy points? I thought he got hurt in the middle of the game this week. Maybe I could be totally off on that.
Copy and paste. That's every.
Yeah, so so Deshaun Watson there with Amari Cooper and David Njoku as the stack. Surprising I did not take Donovan Peoples-Jones in this one because I have a ton of Donovan Peoples-Jones, which has not worked out for me at all, but I didn't take him in this one. Stroud stack obviously working out great for me. funny. I've got Tank Dell here. So I also have Nico
in the
Collins.
15th too, like kind of expensive Dell.
True. Yeah, that is interesting. Huh. It kind of surprised me. I didn't take a ton of Tank Dell, so surprised to see I got him.
This had to be right after that preseason game where he caught a touchdown and like he jumped.
No. You know what happened here is my other quarterbacks had fallen through, so I was just like, I need to make some kind of a stack. So I took Tank Dell and Stroud back to back here in the 15th and the 16th.
Oh yeah, you did. And Stroud was like very cheap.
I assume that I was hoping for Jordan Love. I assume that's why I took Jaden Reed there and thought that Jordan Love could come back to me. I don't know. Or maybe Brock Purdy with George Kittle. So I think I was probably banking on a couple quarterbacks coming back to me, and then was like, well, screw it. None of the quarterbacks I wanted came back to me. So I just created a different stack is probably what happened here. Yeah, so you can see two of those late round running backs I liked in Josh Kelly and Rico Dowdle in this one. I have a ton of Elijah Mitchell, which that's not working out well at all. Devin Achane. So that's something that I kind of lucked out in that I did most of my best ball mania drafting late in the year. So I did a ton of like the puppy drafts and stuff throughout the summer. A lot of my best teams were drafted very late when I was trying to get as many best ball mania 4 teams done as I could. I drafted a ton so I was out on Mostert and Achane all summer. Like I was like, these guys, like, it's a 3-headed monster. I don't really trust it at all. And they're talking about bringing in Dalvin Cook. I didn't think it made any sense to draft Achane where he was going. I just waited on Jeff Wilson for most of the summer. And then in August, we get the report, oh yeah, Jeff Wilson's out and I think he's going to play this season. I don't know. So I just completely hard pivoted right in time to do the majority of my Best Ball Mania 4 drafts. So I actually ended up overweight to both Achane and Mostert after being completely out on them all summer. So that kind of worked out. And you can see here, I actually moved them up to the point where I was drafting ahead of the field, Achane and Mostert, by the end of the summer. So that was fortuitous for me that we got that news on Jeff Wilson before I did most of my Best Ball Mania 4 drafts.
Yeah, and any discussion on advance rate that does not include when you drafted your teams is like a non-faith discussion, right? So like Justin McMahon, friend of the program, auto drafts his team, but he drafts them late August when he has better information. And honestly, like I drafted 150 DraftKings teams all in like 3 days by doing 20 at the same time on my phone. Wow. And I'm advancing 45 of my teams. Those teams are not very correlated. I had much better information then, right? Sure. And I'm the same way as you were. Actually, I was drafting a lot of Achane early, and then later I thought the news was bad on him, and I didn't draft any Mostert until I was like, well, fuck, Jeff Wilson's not even gonna like play to start the year, so like I can't hold out on this anymore. And so yeah, like when you draft matters a lot for advance rate, and you could say, well, okay, that means I should just draft late August because of that. But no, I don't agree because you can build a super team in May. I mean, I built a team that won in June. Pat's team won in July. So like it's a year-to-year phenomenon. And like not every single year are we going to have such a valuable role be so ambiguous in July. Right. Like not every year is the Miami's running back rotation going to be a question mark, My third highest scoring team is a Josh Allen, CJ Stroud team. CJ Stroud, where would you put him in quarterback scoring per game? What's your guess from here on out? What would you put him at? QB what?
QB. So it's funny. I put Kyler Murray at 8.
You famously said many times you're not a player evaluator, so I'm here to ask you many player evaluation takes.
Yeah. I put Kyler at 8, which was apparently too low. I guess I did not remember that he was a previous like top 3 quarterback. So I'm going to move Kyler up to 6 and put Stroud at 8.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? It's like Allen Hurts, Mahomes. I mean, Jackson. Lamar is after he's got like Sam Howell is like if we look at fantasy pros scoring per game, it goes Hurts, Allen, Herbert, Dak, Mahomes, Stroud, Cousins, Howell, Tua. It's got to be in there. Lamar, Fields is going to come back. Purdy's going to come back. It's like, and like Dak, I would definitely say is a little bit more fragile because if the team decides they're going to run the ball, like his scoring goes closer to these weeks. So I don't know, but Stroud is at QB 6 in per game scoring. absurdly. Obviously buoyed by his 42-point week, but and Cousins is not going to play. But, like, I don't know. Tua or CJ Stroud? Let's start there.
Tua.
I'm Tua as well. CJ Stroud or Lamar? Lamar as well. Justin Fields or CJ Stroud?
I mean, if we get Fields back next week,
let's assume we do.
If Fields comes back, it's probably still Stroud for me. That one's really close.
I think I would take Fields if we knew Fields was going to be back healthy, just for rushing upside. But how about Dak or Stroud?
I think I'd take Dak.
I would take Stroud there, I think.
Okay.
Howell or Stroud?
Stroud.
I mean, you say that with confidence because Stroud.
I know Howell's been great. Yeah.
but like the dude's been smashing. Brock Purdy or Stroud?
Stroud.
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, honestly, like Brock Purdy, a respectable 18.5. I guess Goff is like respectable too, 18 points per game.
Still Stroud for me.
Stroud, yeah. And then I guess Kyler against these. Kyler or Stroud, who do you got?
Well, you convinced me that I got to move Kyler up. I think it has to be Kyler just based on the longer history.
Well, it's not impossible that week one was like a bit of a mirage for his like rushing upside, but like the dude is smash.
It looked legit. Like he looked fast. He looked like, got those tiny legs moving.
How about your quarterback of honestly, like maybe the future for Josh Dobbs? Because I don't think it can be understated how much of an improvement the Vikings O-line and skill players are over the Cardinals. But where do you have him versus, say, like Josh Dobbs or Jared Goff?
That is really close. So, I would put him behind Stroud, Kyler, Dak, those guys. I guess we have Justin Jefferson coming back too. He's been using his legs. Yeah.
Well, and he's going to rush in some touchdowns is the big thing.
I know. He's been running.
Yeah.
Take Dobbs.
Okay. So my third highest scoring team, actually I streamed this team. So shout out to everyone who thinks streams are easy. Gotcha here. It's an Allen Stroud team. This team is a tale of three stories because I nailed quarterback. I nailed tight end. Kincaid Schultz
running back, honestly.
I nailed running back, CMC, Saquon, ETN Walker, and wide receiver is the other side of the coin.
Where Gabe Davis, wide receiver approach.
Yeah, the take a lot but have none contribute. Gabe Davis, Traylon Burks, Michael Thomas, Cortland Sutton, OBJ, MBS, Curtis Samuel, Richie James, Slayton. I mean, like honestly, no hope for Richie James, almost no hope for MBS, very very small hope for Darius Slayton. Curtis Samuel has got some touchdowns. OBJ recently has. Sutton has been running touchdowns. Michael Thomas is maybe going to jail. I really don't know what happened there. Traylon Burks.
No, I thought he's hurt. Did he?
Burks is hurt. Well, no. Michael Thomas punched a car and then got hurt.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. I don't know what happened. He got arrested for battery or something like that. Gabe Davis, wide receiver 1, not something. Not so great, but
I didn't know
this is a robust running back team, so it is what
Gabe Davis is going to continue to have his more recent role of like a low ADOT, like being used more like all over the field instead of a deep threat guy.
We saw him used in two different ways, where the most recent game and the game against the Bucks, he had that short ADOT role. In the other game, that was non-existent.
What in between, yeah.
I do think he's like already behind Kincaid in targets and like probably skill, like he's still going to have his ADOT deep bombs, but I don't know. I don't think we're going to get a bunch of like 8 for 80s. Let's look at the top 3 teams in the overall contest real quick. Scoring a massive 15-13, so almost a 30-point lead here by Mikey Juice, 24. This is a Lamar Prescott team, fun quarterbacks. Aaron Jones, Swift, Achane, Warren, Mostert, Gus Edwards, just slammed running back out of the park, including a low-owned Gus. Achane's about to come back for him, Swift is the smash. Aaron Jones, again, a low-owned piece, so nice to have for him. A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb is the reason this team is doing awesome, along with Keenan Allen. Hollywood given some weeks. Cooks gave some weeks. What's the deal with Osborne's injury? Is that long-term or no?
So it was a concussion. I think it's unknown if it's like he's week to week, I think.
Okay. He's going to be back. Curtis Samuel, a great hit too. Laporta and McBride. I mean, McBride, he's like barely gotten any weeks from. So those two coming on and likely does not really matter, but he's on the team. Pretty studly team. Like, yeah. I don't think I would have picked this team as the top scoring, but, you know, like it makes sense looking at it now.
Got both Achane and Mostert, which I assume is a kind of rare combo that really worked out for him here.
A common combo at the top of the draft, though.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is actually a really strong team. I get why he took Likelier because he had Lamar. He avoided all of the the grenades with Lamar. Like he did not have Rashad Bateman, who's one of my highest exposed players. Doesn't like Zay Flowers has been fine, but like you don't really want.
No, he's kind of been a silent killer, honestly.
Oh, has he? Maybe he's better than I realize.
No.
He hasn't had
silent killer. Silent killer. I mean, in a negative sense, like
because he's had no spike weeks.
Yeah, like a player who you think is helping you, but then you look at it and you're like, ooh, the opportunity cost of this guy cost me Addison, Mike Evans, Gabe Davis, choose a run, DeAndre Swift, whatever. Like, yeah, to your point, he's just not have that many touchdowns.
Which, like, you see, like, DJ Moore has not been great that much this year, but, like, he had that 145-point game, and that is such a difference maker. If you can just have that one huge blow-up game that, like, you're offsetting your other wide receivers, you're outscoring them by, 35 fantasy points, like, that is enormous. So, yeah, to not have those is kind of a killer. So he's got Lamar here. Where is Lamar in terms of fantasy point production for quarterbacks this year? Because it feels like he's been disappointing. I have a ton of Lamar, so maybe.
I mean, he has been. He is 18.8 per game, but that's with like unusable weeks for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of his games have been pretty unusable. Only 3 games above 25 points. So like he's fine in best ball because of the ceiling. And I just think this is what Lamar is. He's a best ball quarterback. He's a quarterback where as long as there's going to be running backs cucking him and whatnot, it's just kind of tough for him to be like a more consistent version, like Josh Allen, very consistent, even though, he just doesn't have the running game taking the touchdowns.
Right. Yeah. So, it's a great team.
What I wanted to say about this team is they built for week 17 correlation. I don't know if you noticed this. So it's leading the regular season, but it has a Lamar, Likely, Mostert, Achane stack. It has a Dak, Laporta, CeeDee Lamb stack. It has a Gus Edwards is in there as well. It's got a McBride and Swift stack because the Cardinals and the Eagles play each other. It's got an Osborne, Aaron Jones stack.
It's a really smart team. Do you know this guy, Mikey Juice?
No, I don't.
Okay, I don't either. Yeah, this is a very sharp team.
No, I mean it's just kind of funny where they have all these week 17 correlations and they're leading the the regular season contest. The second highest scoring team is from Totally Rando. Can you read this off for the people?
He's got Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins, RIP.
Yikes.
Josh Jacobs, Zach Charbonnet as the running back 2, but that doesn't really matter when you've got Raheem Mostert as your running back 3. Tyjae Spears, Deuce Vaughn hasn't done anything for this team. I wonder when this is drafted. Jerome Ford coming on, Kyron Williams coming back. Obviously, the A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb stack working out. Keenan Allen's working out pretty well. He's at least had some spike weeks, including this week.
Oh, Keenan's been a smash. He's been absolutely smashed.
Has he really? I know that he's had a couple spike weeks. I guess this week, because he smashed, I guess he's maybe back to that being a smash. But I felt like he was disappointing for at least a little while.
I think he's actually outscoring Diggs. He's outscoring A.J. Brown. Really? This is in total points. So obviously he's had his bye and some of these guys haven't. But if we go to half point, he's wide receiver 3 on the season in total points ahead of Diggs, Lamb, Chase, Amon-Ra. And I didn't know that.
I think I have 14% Keenan, and I still did not know that. I could be wrong. I track all my players and forget how much I actually have. I know I'm above the field on Keenan, so good to see. Yeah, he's got the nuts kind of wide receiver start there with Brown, CD, Keenan. Looks really good. Marquise Brown, as you said, more sharp drafters drafted him. He's got the stacks with Kirk Cousins and TJ Hawkinson, the only Vikings player in the stack. And then he's got Dak with CD Lamb. And he also has Cooks and Gallup, who both obviously went off this week. Josh Reynolds.
And
I don't
Ferguson.
think I drafted. Oh, yeah, and Ferguson. And Josh Reynolds. I don't think I drafted any Josh Reynolds, but he's definitely worked out as an 18th round pick. A totally fine 18th round pick. Like not crushing it, but he's had some nice weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some people in my Discord try to argue he's a league winner, and it's like, sorry guys, like he's a fine guy to bet on. You know, you have to think through what type of bet you're making. Josh Reynolds is a bet that you get a random spike week in the playoffs, which is fine. Like that's a fine bet to make. I make that bet. That's what Deontay Hardy was to me. It was never this dude's gonna smash the regular season. It was this dude could catch 2 touchdowns the right weeks. But
yeah.
They can never, ever be what Kyren Williams was, which is just the starting running back on his team and an absolute smash. They can never, ever be Puka Nacua, which is basically Cooper Kupp, but in the 18th round, right? Who I didn't draft at all. The third highest scoring team is from Bleeze 34.
Brandon Lease. I know that. He's in chat. I know him from chat just now.
Oh, you do? Okay. He's in here.
Just from chat. Yeah, he's in chat. He says he's in third. Yeah, he's got the Dak and Purdy looking really good at the top with the quarterbacks. Dak paired with CD and Gallup once again. Interesting. He does not have Dalton Schultz, who's been doing really well, but he's got Purdy with obviously Kittle in this one. Looks like
Schultz is on the Texans. You meant Ferguson.
I did mean I make that mistake all the time. For some reason, those two I get wrong all the time.
He used to be a Cowboy. So
I know that, but I know that he's no longer. I always, for whatever reason, say Schultz when I mean Ferguson. But yeah, great running backs. Josh Jacobs, interesting to see how much we've seen DeAndre Swift at the top. Maybe it was one of your teams that we were looking at that had DeAndre Swift in it, because he was looking like, again, like the smash of all smashes early on, and recently. Not as sure that that's going to be the case. Alvin Kamara, though, I have 0 shares of Alvin Kamara. Absolutely crushing it. Brian Robinson, great week. Raheem Mostert crushing it, obviously. Kendra Miller, I don't think has done anything all year. He's got that same top 3 as the last one with Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen. He has Chris Godwin, probably wishes he had Mike Evans. He's got Jacoby Myers. He's got Michael Gallup there with the Dak stack. And then Josh Downs. I think Josh Downs had a couple spike weeks.
Yeah, he's been a win. He's been a win in those rounds.
RIP to Justin Ross. I don't know that we see him again this year.
Oh, he doesn't deserve a rip because he was a domestic abuser or something.
True.
He's a see you later.
Yeah, see you later.
And Kittle's been big for this team. Yeah, I mean, Brandon's in the chat here. He says his team isn't that great. I think it's obviously being carried by the strength of the top 5 running backs. Dak and Purdy have been perfectly serviceable. More importantly, Purdy's strong games have worked really well with Dak as a combo, where Dak's really done nothing all year, and Purdy had some good games early, so that just combos well. Josh Downs, a nice late-round hit. Kittle carrying you there. Knox is giving you nothing. Even Gallup's giving you spikes, but you got a shot, Bleeze. So good luck, Brandon. Neil, brother, you clearly are still recovering from COVID. I hear the cough. We thank you for pushing through. Before we get out of here, tell the people who are one player at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end that is going to be on the winning Week 17 teams. I'm pulling up the Week 17 schedule if you need a refresher.
I do need I knew the Week 17 schedule at one point, but at this point, I just don't even think about it. I'm only looking at advanced rates now. So yeah, the refresher will be helpful. Let me take a look at the teams.
The refresher is, it's showing me 2022.
Naturally.
Which I'm sick enough where I maybe could recall. But once we get this refresher, it is Jets at Browns, Lions, Cowboys, Dolphins, Ravens, Pats, Bills, Falcons, Bears, Titans, Texans, Raiders, Colts, Panthers, Jags, Rams, Giants, Cardinals, Eagles, Saints, Bucks, 49ers, Commanders, Steelers, Seahawks, Chargers, Broncos, Bengals, Chiefs, and Packers, Vikings.
All right, it's going to be Travis Etienne is going to be in there facing the Panthers with that kind of volume. I mean, just a smash spot there for Etienne. I'm going to go with. I think I'm going to go with Lamar. I'm debating between Lamar and Hurts here. No, I'm going to go Hurts, AJ Brown, and then I'm going to go Mark Andrews.
See, I would rather go Lamar and like Swift. I just have a feeling like this is going to be like the Eagles games of last year where they're just winning by so much. They're like, okay, get out.
I'm wish casting, by the way, because I have a lot of that combo of Hurts with AJ Brown.
I mean, I'm down for that too, but I like it. So you got Hurts, you got AJ Brown, you got ETN, who is your tight end of choice?
Mark Andrews.
Oh, and Mark Andrews. Yeah, I mean, so I've already mentioned some Week 17 guys I like, but for the 49ers, Ayuk is an absolutely smash spot against the Commanders. Wide receivers like him have decimated the Commanders. I also think DK Metcalf is in a pretty smash spot against the Steelers, who have a strong secondary, but grown-ass men have like decimated them when given the time. I like Swift against the Cardinals. Every piece against the Rams, like a low-owned Saquon maybe. What about which first-round pick do you think has the best Week 17 matchup?
I mean,
you accept that they're all projected evenly, and their matchup is what decides it. So you're not just saying CMC is the best player, so I'm taking him.
Well, scroll down a little bit again so I can see the matchups again, so I can remember the first round picks. So the Vikings have the Packers. I don't hate that for J-Jets. Chase kind of like a little bit.
Watson too.
Yeah, that pairing could work out if anybody gets it to the finals. Honestly, McCaffrey, I think, against that Commanders defense. I mean, Ayuk could absolutely destroy them, but again, with Montez Sweat and Chase Young out of there, I'm not sure they're still going to be a pass funnel. Like they've been a pass funnel all year, but the Niners want to run it, I think. So against an atrocious defense, I could see McCaffrey put up 3 touchdowns against the Commanders. So I think I'd pick McCaffrey out of all these. Tough matchup for Tyreek Hill against the Ravens. Jets has a great matchup against the Packers, or a decent matchup, but they do have Jair Alexander. I wouldn't say a great matchup. It's a fine matchup.
You meant your Vikings,
Eckler,
not the Jets. The Eckler against the Broncos.
I meant J-Jets. Justin Jefferson, J-Jets is what I meant.
I mean, although this Broncos defense is maybe a little bit better, they did just beat the Chiefs and the Bills. I would also say that like the Jamar Chase eruption spot doesn't look as much of an eruption spot against a good Chiefs defense, although you're going to play press man coverage against Jamar Chase. You might fuck around and find out real quick that press man does not work. All right, Neil. Well, while we sign out here, tell the people where they can find you, what kind of content you make, and all that great stuff.
Yeah, you're looking at, I'm on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I make a lot of content for all DFS sports. I've been trying to get more into best ball content. Stokastic is more of a DFS site than best ball. I'm obsessed with best ball, if you can't tell. So I like doing best ball content when they let me.
I mean, it's right here. 2 times BBM3 finalist.
That's right. I can't say I've won it, but I can at least say I've been a finalist now. So gotta hang my hat on that. I do all my content at Stokastic. A lot of during the football season, at least, I'm doing showdown threads every Monday and Thursday. So you'll find that on my Twitter, all my stuff on the Stokastic YouTube or the Stokastic website.
Make sure to give Neil a follow. For me, guys, just please hit the like, please hit the subscribe. I'll be back on Friday at the latest, hopefully building another Pick'em 5 winner. We built a winner on last week's show. I'll be back probably sometime else this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Neil, especially for pushing through. Still a little bit sick, it sounds. Have a great night, guys. Love your families. Drink some water. Eat some food. Do all that great stuff. Peace.